Hi, everybody. I'm Joe O'Connor with Mountain Outlaw Magazine and Outlaw Partners, bringing you a special report. Last Saturday, on February 6th, U.S. Representative Mike Simpson from Idaho released a video announcing a $33 billion proposal. Remove the 4 lower Snake River dams, a move he thinks might save a dwindling wild salmon population that is being pushed to the brink of extinction. Tonight, I have 2 distinguished guests with me who 2 years ago released the acclaimed documentary Damned to Extinction. Michael Peterson directed the film and Peterson Hawley wrote it. And they gave a 2020 TEDx talk on the Snake River dams that Outlaw Partners produced. Gentlemen, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Joe.
Good to be here.
This has been a long-standing battle, to say the least. Stephen, how long has this issue been going on?
The idea to take out the 4 lower Snake River dams was actually first proposed in public by a piano teacher from Boise named Reed Burkholder in the early 1990s. Everybody thought he was crazy. And if Reed is paying attention to this story somewhere in Boise, which I'm sure he is, he's probably feeling somewhat vindicated these days. So it's been around for 30 years with a Republican from Idaho introducing the solution to the problem of the 4 lower Snake River dams. It's really launched completely into the mainstream on either side of the political spectrum. So it's a new era for the cause of freeing the Snake River, for sure.
Well, you know, in your mind, Steve, how is this effort by Representative Simpson any different than what's been going on for the past 30 years?
Well, we've never had any champion in Congress. Throughout the 30-year campaign, there's never been anybody who was willing to risk their political future by pointing to the dams and saying they should come out. And Simpson has been very clear in his own sort of 3-year exploration of this issue that he sees that the only way to save Snake River and Salmon River and Selway River salmon and steelhead is to take out those dams. And you got to give the guy credit, because he also realized that some people without the money that's involved would come out on the losing end of that equation. And his proposal is the first to say, hey, you know what, your farm, your, barging operation, your port is valuable. And so here's how we're going to make this right. And that's why the price tag is, looking fairly astronomical.
Yeah, it's massive. $33 billion is quite a chunk of change.
It is.
Michael, being a film director from Eastern Washington, if someone had told you a lawmaker from Idaho was going to propose this concept, what would you have told them?
There's been more progress in this issue in the last decade, in the last 5 years than I've seen in the last 20, 25 years. Eastern Washington people are very proud of those dams. They think they're providing clean energy and doing a great thing. They're also very somewhat set in their ways and don't like, you build stuff like that, you don't tear them down. So the fact that it's getting this close to a real solution is just amazing. I never would have believed it, 10 years ago.
Well, we covered the release of the 2019 documentary Damned to Extinction in Mountain Outlaw Magazine. Simpson's proposal focuses on the salmon population, but there's an indirect effect on another species, one that Damned to Extinction focuses on. Michael, what is the premise of your film?
Well, it's really how interconnected everything is. We've got this gigantic river, one of the biggest rivers in the world, flowing from the continental divide to the continental shelf. Thanks, Steve, for that wonderful soundbite. But it connects everything together. And there's a resident population of orca whales that mostly spend time around the area of Seattle in what's called the Salish Sea. And their primary source of food is Chinook salmon. And, you go back a century, and the largest producer of Chinook salmon in the entire world was the Columbia River system. And most of those fish spawned up above these Snake River dams that we're talking about. So their populations are dwindling because their food supply is dwindling. And a lot of times they just swim right off the coast of Washington and Oregon at the mouth of the Columbia, trying to feed on Chinook salmon. They do that most of the winter. And then they summer up around the Seattle area where they're become more famous. But yeah, their food supply is directly affected by these 4 lower Snake River dams.
And what's the that orcapod's population now?
Well, I just checked on the Center for Well Research, keeps an updated population, and I think as of let's see, December 31st, the population is now 74 of the southern residents are left. You know, these whales live about the same lifespan as a human, and in the 80s, there was well over 100 of the southern residents. And they'd already faced a lot of challenges in those times. These were the whales that were originally captured for marine parks like SeaWorld. But back in the 80s, they were pretty healthy, and they've dwindled down to about 74 now. So, which isn't a huge, I mean, that's 25% of their population down.
Well, that's what talking about it in terms of percentages it becomes a bit more stark. So, Steve, you were talking a little bit about the implications, but what are the overall implications of Simpson's proposal should it be passed as legislation?
Well, if you look at the fine print of the proposal, what would happen is that the last of the 4 dams would be taken out in 2030. So in spring of 2031, you could drive from Big Sky over to central Idaho to Stanley, get in a raft, and a month later find yourself in the Tri-Cities without ever having set foot on land. That's how much free-flowing river that this proposal would open up.
Amazing. And that would obviously have massive implications scientifically for the survival of these salmon.
Absolutely.
And then the orcas.
You know, it used to be that all those rivers, those central Idaho rivers, the Selway, the Lochsaw, the Clearwater, all the forks of the salmon were full of fish. They cranked out somewhere between just Chinook salmon, which is only one of the 5 species of Pacific salmon, somewhere between 2 and 2.5 million fish every year. You know, last year there were less than 500. So we're doing this just in the nick of time.
Well, that was going to be sort of my next question. I mean, this is a far-reaching 10-year plan that would ostensibly return the lower Snake to its pre-dam free-flowing state. Michael, is that timeline realistic in terms of saving the salmon and in turn the orcas?
Well, the salmon can definitely recover. I've seen rivers like the Toutle River, which was just decimated by the May 1980 earthquake, Mount St. Helens. And that recovered within a couple years stronger than it was before the earthquake. So the salmon are very resilient. You just give them a path and a home, and I think I'm really confident they could recover. The orcas are in a dire strait, but as long as at least there's 2 of them swimming in the ocean, I'm going to keep fighting for them.
Well, Steve, what about the opposition? What about the hydropower these dams provide?
Right.
Where would that lost energy come from in Simpson's eyes?
Well, this is a kind of subtext of this whole issue, and it's actually an issue that Michael and I are maybe hoping to address in our next documentary. There's just a massive kind of energy revolution happening in the Western United States. And so as far as Simpson's plan is concerned, there are provisions in there to replace the power that's lost. But we're also looking at an energy future that is going to be largely powered by renewables. And so my hope for the replacement power at the Snake River dams is that, one, people realize that there isn't really a need to replace that power because In the Pacific Northwest, there's actually a glut of electricity right now that's forecast to last for at least the next decade. And then my second hope is that we use this as an opportunity to do what, for instance, California has done, which is uh, install an increasingly ambitious set of renewable energy policies that have allowed them to build, I think, about 12,000 megawatts of solar power.
Wow.
And it's kind of a, it's no pun intended. It's making cause for cautious optimism about a really bright future, because solar and wind and battery storage, it turns out, are actually cheaper than any other form of electricity that you can come up with. And it also has the advantage of being able to build generation next to the load, so you don't have thousands and thousands of miles of transmission lines. And so, even if this is too late to save salmon and orcas, it's not too late for us to use this as kind of a springboard to look at a wholesale change in the way we produce and deliver electricity. And that, to me, is one of the bright spots in Simpson's bill. Is that he doesn't outline those things specifically, but there's definitely incentives for people to start looking at those kinds of things. And that to me is pretty exciting.
Sure, sure. Michael, how does this proposal affect your film? And what are the next steps for you guys?
Well, I think the timing of our film couldn't be better. A lot of people don't understand the issue, and that's what our film really does a good job, is explaining that things like the mortality of these fish is really on the downstream side, when they're going down and trying to get through these reservoirs and heating up in the reservoirs because of the temperatures of the slack water, and being fed on by predatory fish and the birds, and all the challenges that the fish have going down, as well as the power issue. We explore that pretty well in the movie. It's like why these dams could be removed and no one would really even notice as far as power goes. So I think it's a really great time for people to watch the film, so they understand, what is this, what is Mike Simpson talking about? So, the film is still available, even though it's 2 years old now. It's still available streaming video on demand at our website. And also, we're really excited. We're doing an international distribution deal that'll be done probably this month, and we'll be streaming on an environmental channel. And we also have an educational distribution deal as well. And a lot of universities are buying it and putting it in their catalogs. So it's a really, the film does a good job of explaining the issue in a nonpartisan way. It's just like, this is what's going on. So if people are trying to come up to the issue, it's a really good hour to spend trying to learn about it.
Well, that's exciting. A lot of good things happening for you guys in the film. Well, congratulations on that. This has been a special report from Outlaw Partners and Mountain Outlaw Magazine. I'm Joe O'Connor. Michael Peterson and Peterson Hawley wrote and directed the award-winning 2019 documentary Damned to Extinction. Check it out at damnedtoextinction.com or on Amazon Prime. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening. It's been a pleasure.